hear this. All right, so you got a lot to do today. I will give you your exams if you'll form a line coming this way. Wait a minute. Don't jump up. If you have cans, bring them with you, and as I give you your test, tell me your name again, and I will put it on the computer so that you get your 10 bonus points for your cans. Then we will talk about retailing and wholesaling today. I want to watch a TED video. Oops, all great. Nope, nobody should see that. It's actually not a technical violation of the Family Rights and Privacy Act, also known as FERPA or the Buckley Amendment, because it's not a final grade. That's what the Supreme Court says. So I have not violated rights. For Tuesday, before Thanksgiving, we will be talking about integrated marketing, communication, advertising, and public relations. So for your group challenge, since we have such a compressed time frame in this class, for your group challenge on Tuesday, I want you to get in your groups and then email me a response to, I want you to come up with an ad that you think is great. Give me the YouTube URL in your email. List your group members and then also why you think the ad is great. So justify your reason for thinking the ad is great. And we'll look at a few of those ads and we'll talk about what does make a great ad on Tuesday. So that's the really fun part of the class, is looking at crazy ads and seeing what is a great ad. And we'll talk about what makes them great. Also public relations and integrated marketing communication. So for Tuesday, what you're going to do is you're going to get your groups, you're going to come up with an ad, email it to me with a URL link so I can look at them, tell me what the name of the ad is and why your group thinks that ad is great. So that's your critical thinking challenge for Tuesday. So now, if you want to get started line coming this way, bring your little cans. I will give you your exams back, and then you can take them down to half of them. Okay, since I'm not sure if you picked up, I told you about Tuesday's critical thinking challenge. In your groups, I want you to get together and decide what you think is an awesome ad, the best ad you've ever seen. Find it on YouTube or some place that I can get it. Send me a copy with your group name in the email. So one of your group names, one of your group members be a leader. Take everybody's name down, like we did for the presentation. Put it in the email. Send me the URL with the link. Give me the name of the ad and tell me why your group thinks that this ad is great. So we'll talk about integrated marketing, communication, advertising, and PR on Tuesday, and we'll look at some ads. That's really a lot of fun. So today we're going to talk about retailing and wholesaling. And the value of retailing is really, really important to our economy. And it's a huge portion of what makes up our economy. And consumer spending and consumer confidence plays a role in determining how healthy our economy is. And in fact, it's so important that historians like Elizabeth Cohen wrote a book called Consumers' Republic, Politics and Mass Consumption in Post-War America. And a lot of the things that we'll talk about today in terms of the history of retailing and the development of retailing are cataloged in this book. And it also talks about the impact that retailing has had on things like politics in our society and where we go to get things and how that's affected even things like free speech rights. And it's a really interesting book if you're interested in something like that. So it's a big part of our economy, very important. And retailers provide customer value in forms of the utilities that we talked about when we talked about intermediaries. In terms of time, place, form, and possession. Having the things, the goods, the services that you need, when you need them, where you need them, and in the form that is most convenient to you. 4 of the 30 largest companies in the United States today are retailers. Walmart, Costco, you should know this for a test question, Home Depot, and Target. Collectively, they employ 2.8 million people, another test question. Walmart alone employs 2.2 million people worldwide, not just in the United States. In the United States, collectively, they employ 2.8. Walmart worldwide employs 2.2. And it is the largest private employer in the United States. And we all hate Walmart, don't we? I am like a man going to the gallows when I have to make my trip to Walmart every week. I have found evidence that the Yeti do exist, and they're at the Guthrie Walmart right in front of me. with all their little Yeti children. And I have to put on my sanity filter to go into Walmart, but it's, it's an important thing that I have to do every week to put food on my family. In the words of George W. Bush, do you remember when he said that? I know how difficult it is for you to put food on your family. So I have to put food on my family, and I go into Walmart once a week, and it's a traumatic experience for me. But it's an important employer and an important part of the economy. So we can classify retail outlets in terms of form of ownership. And one of the things that Walmart is criticized for is putting small town businesses and independent retailers, which is the first one that your text talks about in terms of classifying forms of ownership. Walmart is responsible largely for the death of many small town downtowns. When I was growing up as a kid in Guthrie, you could go downtown and you could go to the department stores. There was a JCPenney, there was a Sears store, there were other local department stores, and you could buy clothes. And there was a shoe store downtown. Those were all gone as a result of Walmart. And so if you look at the life cycle of retailing in your textbook, towards the back of the chapter on page 423, for those of you that have the older version of the text, it shows that the downtown central business district, and one of the things that Elizabeth Cohen highlights is this idea that it really affected business downtown and the lifeblood of downtown. And the reason that we would go downtown is because that's where people worked. And now they've moved to the suburbs, and one of the things that impacted this was, of course, the Civil Rights Movement. And in 1954, when the Supreme Court decided Brown versus the Board of Education of Topeka, Kansas, it was largely responsible for killing downtown retail as people suburbanized, and we have what was called white flight, and retailing then left those downtown central business districts and moved to the suburbs and to the shopping malls, right? And that's so the downtown central business district. If you look at that life, cycle on page 423, it says that the downtown business district is dying, right? It's in the declining stage. But is that necessarily true? When I was a kid growing up in Oklahoma in the 1980s, you would not go downtown Oklahoma City after 5 o'clock. It was full of winos and ne'er-do-wells, and now there's a thriving business district that's coming back, and retail is actually starting to regentrify and move back into those things. And one of the things that put a lot of people out of business in those small towns and in their downtowns was the fact that Walmart was able to produce things cheaply. But can you have a strategic advantage that allows you to be an independent retailer and make money? I think you maybe can. And so I want to look at, I like biblical history and biblical lessons that we can look at differently and maybe take something away from it. And so I want you to look and consider Malcolm Gladwell's The Unheard Story of David and Goliath, and how this can be used to marketers' advantage, particularly in the retail industry.
And move product. Not us. We're cofactor. Welcome to the end of either or.
So I wanted to tell a story that really obsessed me when I was writing my new book. And it's a story of something that happened 3,000 years ago when the kingdom of Israel was in its infancy. And it takes place in an area called the Shephelah, in what is now Israel. And the reason the story obsessed me is that I thought I understood it, and then I went back over it and I realized that I didn't understand it at all. Ancient Palestine had along its eastern border, there's a mountain range, still the same is true of Israel today, and in the mountain range are all of the ancient cities of that region. So Jerusalem, Bethlehem, Hebron. And then there's a coastal plain right along the Mediterranean where Tel Aviv is now. And connecting the mountain range with the coastal plain is an area called the Shephelah, which is a series of valleys and ridges that run east to west. And you can follow the Shephelah, go through the Shephelah to get from the coastal plain to the mountains. And the Shephelah, if you've been to Israel, you'll know it's just about the most beautiful part of Israel. It's gorgeous with forests of oak and wheat fields and vineyards. But more importantly, though, in the history of that region, it's had a real strategic function. And that is, it is the means by which hostile armies on the coastal plain find their way, get up into the mountains and threaten those living in the mountains. And 3,000 years ago, that's exactly what happens. The Philistines, who are the biggest of enemies of the kingdom of Israel, are living in the coastal plain. They're originally from Crete. They're a seafaring people. And they may start to make their way through one of the valleys of the Shephelah up into the mountains, because what they want to do is occupy the highland area right by Bethlehem and split the kingdom of Israel in two. And the kingdom of Israel, which is headed by King Saul, obviously catches wind of this, and Saul brings his army down from the mountains, and he confronts the Philistines in the valley of Elah, one of the most beautiful of the valleys of the Shephelah. And the Israelites dig in along the northern ridge, and the Philistines dig in along the southern ridge. And the two armies just sit there for weeks and stare at each other because they're deadlocked. Neither can attack the other, because to attack the other side, you've got to come down the mountain into the valley and then up the other side, and you're completely exposed. So finally, to break the deadlock, the Philistines send their mightiest warrior down into the valley floor. And he calls out and he says to the Israelites, "Send your mightiest warrior down, and we'll have this out, just the two of us." This was a tradition in ancient warfare called single combat. It was a way of settling disputes without incurring the bloodshed of a major battle. And the Philistine who's sent down, their mighty warrior, is a giant. He's 6'9". He's outfitted head to toe in his glittering bronze armor. And he's got a sword, and he's got a javelin, he's got a spear. He is absolutely terrifying. And he's so terrifying that none of the Israelite soldiers want to fight him. It's a death wish, right? There's no way they think they can take him. And finally, the only person who will come forward is this young shepherd boy. And he goes up to Saul and he says, "I'll fight him." And Saul says, "You can't fight him. That's ridiculous. You're this kid. This is this mighty warrior." But the shepherd is adamant. He says, no, you don't understand. I have been defending my flock against lions and wolves for years. I think I can do it. And Saul has no choice. No one else has come forward. So he says, "All right." And then he turns to the kid. He says, "But you've got to wear this armor. You can't go as you are." So he tries to give the shepherd his armor, and the shepherd says, "No." He says, I can't wear this stuff. The biblical verse is, I cannot wear this, for I have not proved it. Meaning, I've never worn armor before. You got to be crazy. So he reaches down instead on the ground, picks up 5 stones, and puts them in his shepherd's bag, and starts to walk down the mountainside to meet the giant. And the giant sees this figure approaching him and calls out, "Come to me so I can feed your flesh to the birds of the heavens and the beasts of the field," right? It issues this kind of taunt towards this person coming to fight him. And the shepherd draws closer and closer, and the giant sees that he's carrying a staff. That's all he's carrying. Instead of a weapon, just this shepherd's staff. And he says, he's insulted. "Am I a dog that you would come to me with sticks?" Right? And the shepherd boy takes one of his stones out of his pocket, puts it in his sling, and rolls it around, and lets it fly. And it hits the giant right between the eyes, right here, in his most vulnerable spot. And he falls down, either dead or unconscious. And the shepherd boy runs up and takes his sword and cuts off his head. And the Philistines see this, and they turn and they just run. And of course, the name of the giant is Goliath, and the name of the shepherd boy is David. And the reason that story has obsessed me over the course of writing my book is that everything I thought I knew about that story turned out to be wrong. So David in that story is supposed to be the underdog, right? In fact, that term, David and Goliath, has entered our language as a metaphor for improbable victories by some weak party over someone far stronger. Now, why do we call David an underdog? Well, we call him an underdog because he's a kid, little kid, and Goliath is this big, strong giant. We also call him an underdog because Goliath is an experienced warrior, and David is just a shepherd. Right? But most importantly, we call him an underdog because all he has is that Goliath is outfitted with all of this modern weaponry, right? This glittering coat of armor and a sword and a javelin and a spear, and all David has is this sling. Well, let's start there with the phrase, all David has is this sling, because that's the first mistake that we make. In ancient warfare, there are three kinds of warriors. There's cavalry, men on horseback and with chariots. There's heavy infantry, which are foot soldiers, armed foot soldiers with swords and shields and some kind of armor. And there's artillery. And artillery are archers, but more importantly, slingers. And a slinger is someone who has a leather pouch with two long cords attached to it. And they put a projectile of either a rock or a lead ball inside the pouch. And they whirl it around like this, and they let one of the cords go, and the effect is to send the projectile forward towards its target. That's what David has. And it's important to understand that that sling is not a slingshot. It's not this, right? It's not a child's toy. It's in fact an incredibly devastating weapon. When David rolls it around like this, he's turning the sling around probably at 6 or 7 revolutions per second. And that means that when the rock is released, it's going forward really fast, probably 35 meters per second. That's substantially faster than baseball thrown by even the finest of baseball pitchers. More than that, the stones in the Valley of Elah were not normal rocks, they were barium sulfate, which are rocks twice the density of normal stones. If you do the calculations on the stopping power of the rock fired from David's sling, it's roughly equal to the stopping power of a 45 millimeter handgun. This is an incredibly devastating weapon. Accuracy, we know from historical records that slingers experienced slingers could hit and maim or even kill a target at distances of up to 200 yards. From medieval tapestries, we know that slingers were capable of hitting birds in flight. They're incredibly accurate. Right? When David lines up, and he's not 200 yards away from Goliath, he's quite close to Goliath. When he lines up and fires that thing at Goliath, he has every intention and every expectation of being able to hit Goliath at his most vulnerable spot between his eyes. If you go back over the history of ancient warfare, you will find time and time again that slingers were the decisive factor against infantry in one kind of battle, against heavy infantry in one kind of battle or another. So what's Goliath? He's heavy infantry. And his expectation when he challenges the Israelites to a duel is that he's going to be fighting another heavy infantry. Right? When he says, "Come to me that I might feed your flesh to the birds of the heavens and the beasts of the field," the key phrase is "come to me." Come up to me, because we're going to fight hand to hand like this. Saul has the same expectation. David says, "I want to fight Goliath," and Saul tries to give him his armor, because Saul is thinking, "Oh, when you say fight Goliath, you mean fight him in hand-to-hand combat, infantry on infantry." But David has absolutely no expectation. No, he's not going to fight him that way. Why would he? He's a shepherd. He's spent his entire career using a sling to defend his flock against lions and wolves. That's where his strength lies. So here he is, this shepherd, experienced in the use of a devastating weapon, up against this lumbering giant, weighed down by 100 pounds of armor, and these incredibly heavy weapons that are useful only in short-range combat. Goliath is a sitting duck. He doesn't have a chance, right? So why do we keep calling David an underdog, and why do we keep referring to his victory as improbable? The second piece of this that's important. It's not just that we misunderstand David and his choice of weaponry. It's also that we profoundly misunderstand Goliath. Goliath is not what he seems to be. There's all kinds of hints of this in the biblical text. things that are, in retrospect, are quite puzzling and don't square with his image as this mighty warrior. So to begin with, the Bible says that Goliath is led onto the valley floor by an attendant. Now that is weird, right? Here is this mighty warrior challenging the Israelites to one-on-one combat. Why is he being led by the hand, by some, young boy, presumably, to the point of combat? Secondly, the Bible story makes special note of how slowly Goliath moves. Another odd thing to say when you're describing the mightiest warrior known to man at that point, right? And then there's this whole weird thing about how long it takes Goliath to react to the sight of David. So David's coming down the mountain, and he's clearly not preparing for hand-to-hand combat, right? There's nothing about him that says, I'm about to fight you like this. He's not even carrying a sword. Why does Goliath not react to that? It's as if he's oblivious to what's going on that day. And then there's that strange comment he makes to David. Am I a dog that you should come to me with sticks? Right? Sticks? David only has one stick. Well, it turns out that there's been a great deal of speculation within the medical community over the years about whether there's something fundamentally wrong with Goliath, an attempt to make sense of all of those apparent anomalies. There have been many articles written. The first one was in 1960 in the Indiana Medical Journal, and it started a chain of speculation that starts with an explanation for Goliath's height. So Goliath is head and shoulders above all of his peers in that era. And usually when someone is that far out of the norm, there's an explanation for it. So the most common form of giantism is a condition called acromegaly. And acromegaly is caused by a benign tumor on your pituitary gland that causes an overproduction of human growth hormone. And throughout history, many of the most famous giants have all had acromegaly. So the tallest person of all time was a guy named Robert Wadlow, who was still growing when he died at the age of 24, and he was 8'11". He had acromegaly. Do you remember the wrestler Andre the Giant, famous? He had acromegaly. There's even speculation that Abraham Lincoln had acromegaly. Anyone who's unusually tall, that's the first explanation to come up with. And acromegaly has a very distinct set of side effects associated with it, principally having to do with vision. The pituitary tumor, as it grows, often starts to compress the visual nerves in your brain, with the result that people with acromegaly have either double vision or they are profoundly nearsighted. So when people have started to speculate about what might have been wrong with Goliath, they said, wait a minute, he looks and sounds an awful lot like someone who has acromegaly. And that would also explain so much of what was strange about his behavior that day. Right? Why does he move so slowly and have to be escorted down into the valley floor by an attendant? Because he can't make his way on his own. Right? Why is he so strangely oblivious to David that he doesn't understand that David's not going to fight him until the very last moment? Because he can't see him. Right? When he says, come to me that I might feed your flesh to the birds of the heavens and the beasts of the field, the phrase come to me is a hint also of his vulnerability. Come to me because I can't see you. And then there's, am I a dog that you should come to me with sticks? He sees two sticks when David has only one. So the Israelites up on the mountain ridge looking down on him thought he was this extraordinarily powerful foe. What they didn't understand was that the very thing that was the source of his apparent strength was also the source of his greatest weakness. And there is, I think, in that a very important lesson for all of us. Giants are not as strong and powerful as they seem. And sometimes the shepherd boy has a sling in his pocket.
So, as marketers, we borrow a lot from other disciplines. And one of the things that I like about this is, among your generation, you probably view Walmart as being the Goliath. And a lot of small town businesses viewed Walmart as being the Goliath. And I think we should remember maybe what the history of Walmart is. So Walmart is founded by Sam Walton in Arkansas. He's actually an Oklahoma boy. Did you all know that? He's from Kingfisher, Oklahoma. That's where he was born. They moved to Arkansas. He went to the military, he gets out, and he starts a business. He starts a Ben Franklin store, which is a 5 and dime store in a little town in Arkansas. He does so well at this business that the man who leases him the store decides, well, that would be a great business for my son to take over. And so he doesn't renew Sam Walton's lease on the business. And Sam is out of a business, basically. And so he has to pack up his inventory and find another place. And he goes to this little town, Bentonville, Arkansas, and he starts Walton's 5 and dime. And he actually takes on what had been his former franchisor, Ben Franklin. He cuts prices. He cuts prices to a standard markup of 30%. No matter how much he got this stuff for, he says, we're going to stick to a 30% margin. And he builds this enormous empire that we now think of as being the Goliath in the retailing industry. But what we're seeing is that just as the life cycle, sort of lifespan says that maybe the downtown central business districts are dying, we're seeing a reemergence and a regentrification in many places, and Oklahoma City is one of these, where we're seeing businesses start to move in and go back downtown. And we're seeing these smaller retailers popping up and becoming very, very popular and very successful. Lots of business schools now offer, and we offer, an emphasis in entrepreneurship. And this is one where you might be able to start a business. If you can figure out a way. What is it that people hate about Walmart? Well, just as Gladwell suggests that maybe Goliath was myopic and couldn't see, or he had this vision problem, right? Walmart, in many respects, and there's a wonderful article called Marketing Myopia that we talked about at the beginning, where people become too fixated on the minutia and the details of being a specific type of business and don't focus on what's out there. So what kinds of things can small businesses add? And if you look at this wheel of retailing that your text talks about, this is kind of how Walmart starts out. It starts out as a discount store, 5 and dime, of Ben Franklin. Then it becomes Walton's, 5 and dime. And then he's added, what can you now do? In this wheel of retailing, if you look at it, what happens is the store expands and they generally start adding more amenities. What does Walmart now have? They have online shopping and pickup in the store. They're adding more and more. That's going to add cost maybe. And so there's this cycle of retailing that you can add to this. And I think you can see how smaller businesses and boutique stores are now able to start competing in niche markets against these giants, because we all hate Walmart. We all hate going to Walmart, right? So you can also, another form of ownership is corporate chain, Macy's, where you have centralized decision-making and purchasing, and Walmart is like this now. I think I told you that at one point in time, Walmart stores had discretion. That's the way Head Country, which is an Oklahoma company that's founded in Ponca City. They manufacture barbecue and stuff that goes along with barbecue, including a dry rub. And then you've tried Head Country's barbecue sauce. It is the best barbecue sauce on the planet. Their dry rub is the best. When I was getting my PhD in New Mexico, Head Country managed to get into Walmart by selling to the local Walmart in Ponca City. And Walmart managers used to have that kind of ability to make those decisions. They no longer have that ability to make those decisions anymore. That's all centralized in Bentonville, and if you want to sell to Walmart, you have to go to Bentonville. Well, Head Country was lucky, and they got into Walmart at just the right time when those managers could still make it, and as a result, they've been picked up, and other stores are now buying Head Country as well. And I literally broke down crying in Las Cruces, New Mexico, when the Walmart there started stocking Head Country barbecue and Head Country seasoning, because I missed it so much. They have great Mexican food in southern New Mexico and horrible barbecue. And so when I got this little piece of home from Oklahoma, I was really, really, really happy. Mary Boothman, who has Maria Reyes, I told you, she also got into Walmart the same way. That's no longer possible. What does this mean for retailers like Walmart? Well, it may mean that they're too big, they're too myopic, they're not able to take advantage of these great products anymore and be lightweight and nimble that smaller and independent retailers can provide. And then you have contractual systems where they act like chains, but they're independents, and we talked about that, like IGA, International Grocers Association. We can also classify retailers based on their level of service. Self-service. All non-essential customer services are eliminated. And what you're seeing is that now Walmart is adding more customer services. You can now buy gift cards at Walmart. You can go do your banking in Walmart. And Arvest was owned by, who's the biggest investor in Arvest? It's Alice Walton. So you've got all these amenities that are now coming in Walmart. What's one of those stores that's starting, at least in the United States, on this wheel of retailing that has cut out all of this and provides cheap prices and maybe more pleasant experience for you because you don't have to go to Walmart? How many of you have shopped at Aldi? Right across from Walmart? What is Aldi? If you go into an Aldi store, do you see very many employees? Hardly any, right? They've cut out all of these non-essential services. So self-service. Then you have limited services. They may offer credit, merchandising returns, and things like that, but not full services like alterations or customization or specialization. And then finally, you have full-service firms like Neiman Marcus, where they offer a whole range of things. If you go to Saks Fifth Avenue, they have a personal concierge in Tulsa. If you go to the Saks store, not Saks off Fifth Avenue, but one of the main stores. If you go to Saks, they've got concierge. They've got alterations. They'll do things for you. They'll help with style. They'll help with picking out various things and matching them, and that's a benefit, right? We can also classify retailers by the types of merchandise based on whether or not, and there's a 2x2 matrix, the depth and breadth of the line. So a lot of stores you'll find are single line stores, and they have a lot of depth. And the example that your text gives you is Victoria's Secret. What does Victoria's Secret sell? They don't have a lot of products, right? They're lingerie, but they've got a lot of breadth in that product line. They've got a lot of depth, in that product line. Breadth of line, so you can have a lot of products. Walmart is an example of a store that has a lot of products, right? And they also have some depth in those product lines. If you go to a Costco, for example, they have a lot of products, or Sam's, which is also owned by Walmart, they have a lot of different products. What can you buy at Sam's? Well, you can buy toothpaste and cleaning supplies and clothes and canned goods and food and stuff like that. But do they have a lot of depth in those product lines at Costco or Sam's? If you go to Sam's and you want toothpaste, how many brands of toothpaste do they carry? They carry like 2, right? If you go to Walmart, they carry what? You can get Crest and all of the other ones, all of the Sensodyne and all of the whitening and the various types. And so you've got that breadth and depth of the line. Non-retailing is obviously becoming enormously important, particularly in the online environment. And stuff that we never thought that we would sell online before is now being sold online. Now, a lot of stores are pure play, maybe totally online. What's a pure play online retailer? Amazon. And then you have bricks and clicks. So Walmart has become a bricks and clicks type retailer. Okay? Cataloging. TV. How many of you buy from TV shopping network, home shopping network? How many of you watch Shark Tank? How many of you love Lori on Shark Tank? Only one of you loves Lori on Shark Tank. I love Lori. I think Lori's the nicest one. QVC, right? Shopping networks. How many of you bought stuff in the middle of the night while you're insomnia, shopping online? That's become an important part. Direct selling. You used to have a lot more of this than you do now. There were all kinds, and one of the things that your text gives us an example of direct sales, and they say everybody should know this, is Fuller Brushes. And I highlighted this and marked to my textbook. Really, most of you have never heard of the Fuller Brush Company. They used to go door to door and sell women's fine hair brushes. You can now Fuller's still around, but you can buy them in Walmart. They're still manufacturing brushes, and they're not nearly as prestigious as they used to be. There were lots of retailers that sold directly door to door. Electrolux vacuum cleaners started out that way. Anybody have an Electrolux or a Rainbow? Anybody remember Rainbow vacuum cleaners? Rainbows are wonderful. They're really, really clean. They use water. Those are sold door to door. Electrolux has now moved into big box retailing. They're sold at Best Buy and places like that, and Sears. Mary Kay is one of the ones that your text talks about. That is multi-level marketing, and Mary Kay has made a lot of women very, very wealthy. If you see a pink Cadillac out there, that is somebody who is almost a millionaire by selling Mary Kay. You can go see Mary Kay's headquarters. She's died. Mary Kay Ash has died, and I believe her son is now taking over the business. It's right down on the freeway in Dallas. You can go see it. It's a big corporate office building, and they were started in Texas. But those are becoming, I think, in many respects, less and less frequent because you can buy all of this stuff online. Wholesaling. Many retailers, of course, depend on intermediaries to engage in wholesaling. And we talked a lot about wholesaling and the intermediary type stuff. But you should know, for example, for this next test, some of the terms that they use: merchant wholesalers, independently owned firms that take title to merchandise and provide it to other retailers, or other resellers, or most of the retailers. When I was first in business in Oklahoma, when we opened our first bed and breakfast, we bought from an independent wholesaler named William E. Davis. Been taken over by U.S. Foods, but he was out here on Broadway Extension, and they bought all the stuff and had salespeople to go out and call on restaurants and things like that. And then there are agents and brokers, manufacturers, agents who sell on behalf of one manufacturer maybe, or a limited number, and then brokers who bring buyers and sellers together. Any questions on retailing or wholesaling? All right, so again, for Tuesday, you need to get your groups communicate by email or whatever. You've got about 10 minutes in class where you can get together, decide what your advertisement that you think is great is going to be. Send me a link to that. We'll look at some of those on Tuesday, and then a week from today, you're welcome to come and be here if you want, just to try and soak up the knowledge through osmosis. But I won't, because it's what? Thanksgiving, my favorite holiday. That would make a good bonus test.